Pakistan is a home to one of the world's largest refugee populations, hosting 1.4 million registered Afghan refugees. They hope the US-Taliban peace deal will allow them to return to their home country. Details in this report.
Pakistan has been hosting Afghan refugees since the 1979 Russian invasion of Afghanistan. The 1992 civil war and 2001 invasion by the US forced Afghans to flee the violence in their country.
The Russians came and bombarded our village. Then we left our houses and it was not possible for us to live in there. We spent 3 nights in the mountains. We took refuge here with my children to the mountains.
In a few hours, the US is going to sign a peace deal with the Taliban. Afghan refugees are hopeful that the agreement will mark an end to the decades-long conflict.
This is good news, and may God bring peace and stability. I was going back 2 years ago, as my neighbors know. I packed up everything and I was leaving, but there is no peace and stability. Therefore, I stayed back here. If peace comes, we will be happy to go back to our homeland.
The refugees are weary of 40 years of war in the country. Afghan migrants also want intra-Afghan talks for a long-lasting peace in their country.
We are happy about the US-Taliban deal, and then the intra-Afghan talks should start. We are happy and optimistic about it if an intra-Afghan dialogue is held, and then the Afghan refugees go back to their homes safely.
The peace accord will be signed in Doha. This will lead the withdrawal of thousands of US troops from Afghanistan. Pakistan has welcomed the agreement, saying it's a positive development for peace in the region.
For more on this, we are joined by Ashraf Jahangir Cozzi, former ambassador and analyst from capital Islamabad. Thank you for your time. Now, Mr. Cozzi, the US and Taliban are set to sign a peace deal in Doha today that could signal the end of Washington's longest war. How do you see this development for the peace and stability of our region?
I think this is a very major development. It was expected to have taken place earlier, sometime last year, but then Trump suddenly pulled out. But now it's happened. Pakistan has made a contribution to making it possible. And so in and of itself, this particular deal is more than welcome, bringing to an end 18 years of absolute hell and misery for the Afghan people and also, to a great extent, its neighbors. However, there are many things where we have to be concerned with. The context in which this development is taking place, and in fact in which all events in the world are taking place, is number one, within the immediate global crisis of, COVID-19 or the coronavirus. This is going to impact on every single development. And if this does not lead to peace, this will end up resulting in a major expansion of this plague in Afghanistan, which would then immediately impact on its neighbors, including Pakistan. Don't want to go into any detail, but this is a major, major consideration. The other thing is now, what are the next steps? Will the Taliban be willing to speak with the government in Kabul, which is, just concluded an election, and the results of which were announced many weeks or months later? Which is controversial, and we know the Taliban will not speak directly with Kabul. They will be willing to meet with them indirectly, as they have in the past. Secondly, the election results will mean nothing, because the Taliban will insist on, and will have a right to insist on, a sharing of power. So that will put an end to the results of this election in Afghanistan, and then they'll have to plan for an election which would include Afghanistan a couple of years down the line, because the Taliban would have to become a political party, would have to be able to participate in a political process before they'd be ready to take part in an election. Secondly, how long is it going to take for the U.S. to withdraw from Afghanistan? We keep hearing the word about 18 months. Will they leave bases behind of one kind or another? Which would that be acceptable to the Taliban? All of these things are important. What about constitutional changes to make it acceptable to the Taliban? You can't do too many changes, because that would alienate a large segment of opinion in Afghanistan, particularly women. And so the Taliban, have they changed to that extent that they will accommodate accommodate the demands of the women of Afghanistan, which are very appropriate demands and all, and how much flexibility is there in the Taliban without them splitting. And if they split, then they lose their negotiating ability. So it's a very complicated process. Nonetheless, a very fortunate development, and let's hope that it will lead to a stable peace.
Mr. Cozzi, you rightfully said that Pakistan has made a contribution towards this peace deal. Now, moving forward, one can only hope that this deal will be honored by all the parties. Is there any challenge to peace even after the deal is signed? And how do you see Pakistan's role after the deal?
There's nothing but challenges. There will be a challenge every moment. The past shows that these kinds of deals don't last, but nonetheless, there is a desperate war weariness amongst the people of Afghanistan. There is also in America an election coming, and Trump wants to show that he's got some major achievement to his credit, which is a withdrawal from Afghanistan, bringing back a whole lot of troops, if not all of them. So there is a great opportunity now, despite the fact that in the past such agreements have broken down very quickly, when you have had ceasefires temporarily, etc. But I think there is very good reason, if there is sincerity, if they talk with each other, and Pakistan can play a very important role, provided it can develop trust with the Afghan factions and also with the United States. Now the fact of the matter is the United States is looking at a broader game vis-a-vis Russia and China, and may not want to completely withdraw from Afghanistan. That would spell trouble, because as if an American fighting presence remains in Afghanistan under whatever pretext, it will ensure instability in Afghanistan and will prevent the refugees from returning to Afghanistan.